the vehicle that survived human error. It wasn't built to be fast. It wasn't designed to impress. Its purpose was far more unsettling, to survive people at their worst. Every engineer knows the truth no brochure admits. Machines don't fail first. Humans do. Distraction, fatigue, overconfidence, panic. And this vehicle was created in response to that reality, not in denial of it. To understand why this car mattered, we need to return to a period when safety meant reaction. Airbags deployed after impact. Stability systems intervened after control was lost. The industry accepted that mistakes were inevitable and focused on minimizing damage instead of preventing it. One team questioned that assumption. They believed error could be anticipated, softened, and absorbed before catastrophe occurred, not by taking control away from drivers, but by designing a machine that expected inconsistency, a vehicle that assumed distraction, misjudgment, and delayed reactions as normal operating conditions, not edge cases. The design philosophy was radical in its humility. Instead of asking how skilled a driver could be, the engineers asked how unskilled one might become. Late-night commutes, poor weather, cognitive overload, emotional stress. The vehicle would not punish these moments. It would protect against them. Structurally, the car was engineered to forgive. Load paths were designed to form predictably under misuse. Controls were weighted to resist abrupt inputs. Systems communicated continuously, not to optimize performance, but to detect hesitation and confusion. Early simulations revealed something unexpected. The car didn't just reduce accidents, it reduced near misses. Drivers corrected mistakes earlier. Panic responses softened. Small errors stopped escalating. The machine acted like a buffer between intention and consequence, absorbing human inconsistency quietly and without judgment. Critics dismissed the idea as excessive. They argued drivers should adapt to machines, not the other way around. That building for error encouraged carelessness. That responsibility would erode. But the data told a different story. When drivers felt supported instead of punished, behavior improved, trust increased, stress decreased, and with less stress came better decisions. The vehicle wasn't correcting humans. It was cooperating with them. And that cooperation would soon be tested in ways no simulation could prepare for, because designing for human error means accepting a hard truth. Eventually, error always arrives. Real-world testing began in environments chosen for their unpredictability. Congested city streets, poorly maintained highways, long rural routes where fatigue replaced urgency. The engineers weren't looking for perfection. They were looking for moments when things went wrong. And things went wrong constantly. Drivers missed turns, misjudged braking distances, drifted across lanes while distracted, entered corners too fast. In most vehicles, these moments triggered alarms, interventions, or panic. In this one, they triggered something subtler: resistance. The steering gently pushed back against overcorrection. Throttle response softened when inputs became erratic. Braking assistance anticipated hesitation. Rather than reacting to impact, the vehicle didn't seize control. It slowed consequences. Drivers described the sensation as calming. Instead of startling alerts or abrupt overrides, the car felt like it was buying them time. Time to think, time to recover, time to choose better. Telemetry revealed a pattern that surprised everyone. The vehicle intervened most often not during extreme situations, but during mundane ones. Low-speed errors, gradual fatigue, cognitive drift, the places where human error quietly accumulates until it suddenly becomes dangerous. Accident rates dropped, but more importantly, stress indicators did too. Heart rate variability stabilized. Reaction times improved over longer drives. Drivers emerged less exhausted. Even after difficult conditions, the car didn't just survive human error. It reduced it, but success brought scrutiny. Critics warned of dependency. They argued that drivers would rely too heavily on forgiveness, allowing skills to decay. Regulators questioned whether subtle intervention blurred accountability. Legal teams worried about liability when a system influenced behavior without overt control. The engineers responded with evidence. Data showed no increase in reckless behavior. In fact, Repeated exposure to a forgiving system encouraged smoother inputs. Drivers learned restraint faster. Panic responses diminished. The car acted not as a crutch, but as a teacher, one that corrected gently instead of punishing harshly. Still, skepticism remained. Then came the event that changed the conversation entirely. During a long-term fleet trial, a vehicle encountered a scenario no one planned for. A driver suffered a brief medical episode behind the wheel. Not loss of consciousness, just confusion, delayed reactions, poor judgment. In most cars, that moment would have escalated quickly. In this one, it didn't. The vehicle detected inconsistency, reduced speed gradually, stabilized trajectory, and guided itself into a controlled stop without dramatic intervention. No alarms, no sudden maneuvers, just quiet containment. The driver survived. So did everyone around them. And in that moment, the engineers realized they hadn't just built a safer car. They had built something capable of surviving the unpredictable reality of being human. But the implications of that realization were only beginning to surface. The incident sent shockwaves through the company. What had been a theoretical advantage was now undeniable proof. The vehicle hadn't reacted to a crash. It had prevented one. Without drama, without spectacle, and without stripping control away entirely. Executives praised the outcome publicly, but privately, unease spread. The system had crossed a subtle boundary. It didn't just assist driving. It interpreted human behavior. It made judgments about intent, capability, and risk in real time. And while those judgments saved lives, they raised questions no regulation had fully addressed. Who decides when a human is no longer fully in control? Regulatory bodies demanded transparency. How did the system know when to intervene? What thresholds triggered action? Could it misinterpret stress, emotion, or unconventional driving styles? The engineers opened their models, exposing layers of behavioral analysis built not on rigid rules, but on patterns of deviation. The system didn't assume failure. It detected drift, small inconsistencies, delayed responses, overcorrections, the subtle signs that attention was slipping. Instead of waiting for a catastrophic event, it slowed the world down around the driver. Speed reduced, stability increased, cognitive load eased. But that subtlety was precisely what frightened critics. They argued the car was shaping behavior invisibly, that drivers might not always know when assistance was active. That accountability could blur. If the vehicle softened consequences, did responsibility soften too? The engineers countered with data. Drivers didn't become reckless. They became smoother. Over time, intervention frequency dropped. People adapted to the calm feedback loop, learning from it subconsciously. The vehicle wasn't replacing skill. It was reinforcing it. Still, the philosophical debate intensified. Some claimed the car represented the future, a machine designed around human weakness rather than denial of it. Others warned it was a step toward quiet autonomy, where decisions drift away from people without explicit consent. The pressure peaked during a high-profile independent evaluation. Test drivers were instructed to behave unpredictably, distracted inputs, late braking, abrupt steering, emotional driving patterns. The vehicle responded with restraint, never seizing control, never escalating. It survived every scenario, not by overpowering the driver, but by absorbing their inconsistency. The final report was blunt. This vehicle does not eliminate human error. It neutralizes its consequences. That sentence changed everything. Because once a machine proves it can survive human error, the expectation shifts. Safety stops being about reacting to disaster. It becomes about designing systems that expect imperfection as a norm. And that expectation would soon collide with an industry still uncomfortable admitting how fragile people really are behind the wheel. The industry's response was cautious, almost offensive. Publicly, the vehicle was praised as a milestone in safety design. Privately, it unsettled long-held assumptions about responsibility, control, and trust. Because once a machine proves it can survive human error, the uncomfortable question becomes unavoidable. Why haven't all machines been built this way? The vehicle entered production without fanfare. No bold slogans. No claims of invincibility. Its creators avoided language that suggested replacement of human judgment. Instead, they spoke quietly about cooperation, forgiveness, and margin, words rarely associated with performance. On the road, the impact was unmistakable. Accident severity dropped. Near misses declined. Drivers reported feeling less tense, less rushed, less reactive. The car didn't encourage complacency. It encouraged calm. And calm, it turned out, was one of the most powerful safety systems ever engineered. Regulators adapted slowly. New frameworks emerged to describe assistance that intervened without dominance. Insurance models shifted from fault to prevention. Training programs began emphasizing awareness instead of reaction. The presence of the vehicle forced institutions to admit something they had long avoided. Humans are not predictable, and pretending otherwise is dangerous. The machine didn't succeed because it was smarter than people. It succeeded because it was kinder to them. It assumed distraction. It anticipated fatigue. It respected hesitation. And by doing so, it created space for better decisions instead of punishing bad ones. Years later, its influence became visible everywhere. Steering systems that resist panic. Braking systems that soften indecision. Interfaces designed to reduce stress instead of stimulate it. The philosophy spread quietly, embedded in designs that no longer blame drivers for being human. The vehicle that survived human error never claimed perfection. It claimed understanding. And in an industry obsessed with control, that understanding became its greatest innovation. Because safety isn't about building machines that expect flawless behavior. It's about building machines that forgive us when we're not. Subscribe to join the journey. The